But our top story and our big focus today is on the potentially game-changing move of the Narendra Modi government that has triggered off a massive political controversy. A day after his union minister Harsimrat Kaur of the Akali Dal resigned and amidst widespread farmer protests, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has come out and accused the opposition of misleading the farmers of the country. The centre claims that the new bills that reform agriculture will ensure that farmers will get better prices for their produce and that the procurement system will continue under the minimum support price scheme. But both in Punjab and Haryana in particular, the government now finds itself amidst pressure because of rising farmer anger. Our top story today, as I said, is on the game-changing move that the Prime Minister has undertaken on farm reform. Take a look.
अब ये दुष्प्रचार किया जा रहा है कि सरकार के द्वारा किसानों को एमएसपी का लाभ नहीं दिया जाएगा। ये भी मनगढ़ंत बातें कही जा रही हैं कि किसानों से धान, गेहूं इत्यादि की खरीद सरकार द्वारा नहीं की जाएगी।
A day after Union Minister Harsimrat Kaur Badal's resignation from the Union government, the Prime Minister makes a passionate appeal. But Prime Minister Modi's words have no impact on farmer protests that continue to swell in North India. The anger among farmers over the 3 new farm bills passed by the Lok Sabha is turning into a serious law and order situation. Farmer unions have threatened to block rail and road connectivity. In the epicenter Punjab, a farmer attempted suicide by consuming poison in Badal village of Muktsar district.
किसानों को बिल्कुल झूठ बोल कर गुमराह कर दिया इन्होंने। बिल्कुल पूरी तरह से पूंजीपतियों को बढ़ावा देने के लिए इन्होंने पूरा स्टॉक करने की इजाजत दे दी है।
पंजाब में 25,000 आड़तियां है, उसके साथ लगभग 12,50,000 लेबर काम करती है। ये सभी बेरोजगार हो जाएंगे।
बड़ी कंपनियां जमीन सारी ले लेगी तो किसान को अपनी खेती होते हुए भी अपनी खेती में मजदूर की तरह काम करना पड़ेगा और अपनी गरीबी में बढ़ोतरी हो जाएगी।
The new farm bills have ignited fresh hope of opposition unity. The Congress is wooing prominent regional parties to defeat the bills in the Rajya Sabha.
कुरुक्षेत्र के युद्ध में, इस धर्म युद्ध में सेनाएं आमने सामने खड़ी है। कौरव नरेंद्र मोदी सरकार है, पांडव इस देश का किसान और खेत मजदूर है। कांग्रेस उस किसान के साथ पांडवों के पाले में खड़ी है।
The government is confident of its numbers in the Rajya Sabha and is focusing on reassuring farmers.
एमएसपी पर भारत सरकार खरीद करती थी, खरीद करती है और आने वाले कल में भी खरीद करती रहेगी। इस बिल का जो लोग विरोध कर रहे हैं उनको बिल पढ़ना चाहिए और अगर वो किसान के पक्षों को देखकर बिल को देखेंगे तो किसान का हित उनको दिखाई देगा।
The BJP also released a copy of the 2019 Congress Party manifesto, which had promised to repeal the APMC Act. The Congress shot back, saying it had promised to set up small farmer markets close to villages.
Farmer protests are spreading like a wildfire from Punjab to Western Uttar Pradesh, and this has given the Congress Party an opportunity to unite the opposition against NDA in the Rajya Sabha where the bills are taken up. All eyes will be on the non-aligned parties like the Samajwadi Party, BSP, TRS and YSRCP. With camera person Ashwini Helen, this is Anand Patel in New Delhi for India Today.
And joining me now is the former union minister from the Akali Dal, Harsimrat Kaur Badal, who's of course resigned from the union cabinet yesterday. Harsimrat Kaur Badal, the big question is, why did it require the bill to be brought to parliament for you to resign? The ordinance came out months ago. Why didn't you resign then in protest against what you are now calling our anti-farmer bills?
First of all, Rajdeep, I'm not calling it anti-farmer. It's the farmers who are calling it that. So let's get that clear. Secondly, let's also get clear that right from the time it came to my Ministry for Interministerial Comments, I put in my apprehensions there that the stakeholders had reservations. And without taking the state governments and the stakeholders on board, no law should be made. I raised this again when I heard that an ordinance might be coming in. I raised it at the cabinet. Despite that, later when it was tabled at the cabinet, I again vociferously raised the fact that at the ground there's a huge amount of resentment building up. And across party lines, this is going to turn out to be a huge headache if we are not address those concerns of the farmers. And in the last 2.5 months where these huge agitations have taken place, I worked to the best of my ability and to all of my resources to meet with all the farmer organizations. Sukhbir met with, I think, even farmer organizations of Haryana, Rajasthan, including all the 10-11 from Punjab. I even gave them copies of the ordinance and saying that tell me which line to delete and which line to add. I will get it done from my government. I brought all the apprehensions to the notice of everybody in my government repeatedly from top to bottom.
But
got the agriculture minister to speak to them many times,
that
got
means
him
your
to give
pressure
in
didn't
writing
work.
addressing those apprehensions. But when it was clear,
that means your pressure for
Absolutely.
months. For
When
months
it
you are
was
telling
clear
me that you are
that
unable
my
to make any
words-
impact. That means, and it, therefore the question arises: you could have perhaps resigned earlier and put pressure on the Modi government. Why now, when it's a fait accompli?
for the simple reason, Rajdeep, that I believed in trying till the very end. An ordinance can be changed by the time it becomes an act. Many new things can be incorporated in it. And continuously, I was trying to bring home the fact, the apprehensions, and the resentment of the farmers. I tried it till the very end at every level. But when it was clear that it's being coming into Parliament the next day, without those apprehensions being addressed, and the fact that, the farmers are being bhadkaoed by someone, if in these COVID times not caring about their lives, they're coming out in thousands and sitting for weeks at an end. Obviously, they are worried about something, and all I asked was that please send it to the select committee, which will call all the stakeholders. Let's take them on board, address their apprehensions so that they welcome it, and not that they oppose it as an anti-farmer bill.
I want to understand, do you believe...
When it was clear that I had
Ms.
failed
Badal,
to
I want to know
convince-
from you, do you believe it's anti-farmer? Because the Prime Minister has made it very clear that he believes this is in the farmer's interest. Where do you stand? Do you believe this bill is anti-farmer?
Rajdeep, it does not matter what you and I think. The bill has come in for the benefit of farmers. They must believe that it's in their benefit. How does it matter what I believe?
No,
We
so
have
is
to
it a
convince
problem
the
just of
stakeholders.
communication, or is it the content?
If they believe that their livelihood is going...
Is it communication or is it content? Do you believe that the bill fundamentally is against the farmer's interests, or do you believe it's only been a failure of the communication of the Modi government?
Well, there has definitely been lack of communication is a big issue. There is no doubt about that, because communication has not taken place with the stakeholders who find an issue with it. But on the other hand, it is also a fact that when you talk to them, there might be many things. For example, one size does not fit all. Punjab has a very robust mandi system, a robust infrastructure, a very robust farming system where the farmers, the middlemen, the commission agents, the labours are all integrated. The entire economy of Punjab, be it a shopkeeper or a trader who's directly, indirectly dependent on the farmer. So the infrastructure created in Punjab does not exist maybe in Bihar or some remote rural area. Now, when you bring in an ordinance, people in Punjab feel that the existing system is so good, which has worked so effectively. Now you're going to have corporates coming in, monopoly and corporatization taking place, and after a while it's going to lead to the Sarkari infrastructure totally becoming redundant, because these people don't have to pay any taxes, so they can pay better.
Some will
And
say
once
that
they've got
very
the farmers
Sarkari...
totally dependent on them,
Some will
that's when
say
the
that very
exploitation might start.
that very Sarkari structure led to entrenched political interests, whether they were from the Akalis or other parties, and the general belief is that you responded only because the Congress took up the issue. Yours has been a reaction, or that's what Captain Amrinder Singh says, too little, too late, and a reaction to what he did, and that there are entrenched interests that you are today supporting.
I think, Rajiv, you're just one of the few people who still believes and listens to Captain, who's been there for too long, and people have had enough. Now you're talking to me about a person who concurred with all these ordinances as said by the minister on the floor of the House. And if the minister was telling lies, why did the MPs not move a privilege motion against him? You're talking about a Captain Amrinder Singh who in his 2017 manifesto released by no less than Dr. Manmohan Singh and made by his finance minister promises these very same ordinances, and he comes in March, and the first thing and the only thing he's completed out of this thick manifesto of his is implement this act in the first Vidhan Sabha, which exists in Punjab for the last 3.5 years. This is the manifesto by Rahul Gandhi for the 2019 elections, which says that they're going to implement exactly the same things if they come in. That's the reason why Amrinder Singh concurred with the minister when all the CM's stakeholders meetings took place.
I asked Mr. Chidambaram about that manifesto. They claim that they were not dismantling the APMC like the BJP or the NDA wants to do.
Please let me finish. I'll come to your answer later. This Congress and Captain Amrinder Singh, who have concurred, who have implemented, now double face go and oppose it in the parliament. That is the real face of Congress. Now you come to APMC. Maybe in many states it's controlled by some parties. But anybody who knows Punjab, that in Punjab it is totally under the government. The entire mandi structure is under the government. And I must say that Sardar Prakash Singh Badal played the most important role in making this robust infrastructure, where every 5 mandis has, every 5 villages, 5 kilometers, it has its own mandi. Every village is connected by the rural road so that the farmers can come to the mandi. The entire crop which comes in a window of 10 days. And mind you, this is the crop which feeds 40% into the national pool from this little 2% of land area state that we have.
So has the Modi,
and in 10 days it's procured.
So has the Modi
MSP
government's
price,
vision of one nation, one market
hours, the
failed?
farmer gets his payment. Where does it happen in any other part of the country?
So Harsimrat Kaur Badal, do you believe the Modi government's vision of a one nation, one market is a flawed vision?
It doesn't matter, Rajdeep, what you and I believe. My entire resignation was only asking for one thing, that the farmers who have sent me there, they have apprehensions against this bill. And not only my farmers, the farmers of Haryana, of Rajasthan, of UP have approached us. Across party lines, you heard in the parliament how many people raised how many apprehensions. My one demand was that please let's send it to the select committee, let the stakeholders be consulted, address the apprehensions and bring in a bill which is in the benefit and welcomed by all farmers across, because each farmer is the backbone of the economy of our country, and each of us in that Lok Sabha have got there with the farmers' votes.
Let me therefore ask you...
So whether it's one farmer states or farmers of one state or the other doesn't matter, let's address all of them.
Let me ask you in conclusion, why didn't your party therefore decide to withdraw support to the NDA? If you believe that this bill is a flawed one, if you really stand for the farmers, you claim that your heart beats for the Kisan, why are you not withdrawing support? Do you want the best of both worlds? You want to be part of the NDA and at the same time are trying to make a symbolic gesture by withdrawing from the cabinet?
Rajdeep, if you think withdrawing from a cabinet is a symbolic gesture, I would request you tell Captain Amrinder Singh or any of his MPs to do it, if it's so symbolic according to you. It's a well thought out decision, which was not an easy decision, because staying within the government, I have managed to do for Punjab, which your entire Captain Amrinder Singh's 10 years of his government staying in the center could not do even one of those. So what Prime Minister Modi has done for Punjab and Punjabis is incomparable to what our very own Congress and Dr. Manmohan Singh did not do for 10 long years, despite Amrinder Singh's wife being a minister there, whether it's the Kartarpur Sahib corridor, whether it's justice for 84 or a number of other things.
Do you want to have your cake and eat it too? Do you want to have your cake and eat it too?
No, it is not a question.
Be part of the government and yet not be part of the cabinet.
Can I answer you?
Yes.
If you've asked me a question, please allow me to answer. I have resigned from the cabinet yesterday. As my party president has said, the future course of action will be decided by the party high command, and that high command has not met and given a decision.
Ma'am, you
they
and
will
Sukhbir
take
are
the course of action, but let me tell you that the course of action will be that. Let me tell you the course of action will be that which is in the benefit of the farmers. Akali Dal and me and my party stand with the farmers. Whatever the decision is, the farmers will be at the top of our agenda. Be rest assured about that.
Okay. Harsimrat Kaur Badal, feisty as ever. Appreciate your joining us. Thank you so much. Okay, let's take this debate forward. Get more political voices. Politics dictating opposition to farm reforms. Is this about politics or is this about economics? Is the reforms to render the farmers dependent on corporates as the opponents claim? Are they anti-farmer bills or is this a far-sighted reform? Is this, as we were told yesterday by one of India's leading agriculture economists, India's 1991 delicensing moment for the farm sector? I'm joined by Sachin, the Rajasthan Congress leader and someone who's been seen as a leader identifying with the issues of the farmer, and Ajay, Panda, the BJP's vice president and articulate spokesperson. I don't want to do a face-off as I promised my two guests. They are friends as they call themselves, so they don't want to fight with each other, but I want to give each of you a chance to be heard. Sachin Pilot, let me start with you, because the fact is that the Congress itself in its manifesto had spoken about dismantling the agriculture or repealing Agriculture Produce Market Committees Act and making trade in agriculture produce free from all restrictions. This was section 11 of your manifesto. And you had said we will establish farmers markets with adequate infrastructure and support in large villages and small towns to enable the farmer to bring his produce or her produce and freely market the same. What is the BJP doing different to what you were doing in your manifesto?
What the Congress party, Rajdeep, promised in the manifesto was very clear, that even if we have to dismantle or reform the APMC, we had promised much larger, greater investment by the government to create much more larger markets for the farmers so that they get better remuneration. What this ordinance has done is actually 85% of the small farmers will have no infrastructure available to them. So this sort of so-called reform is not reform. It's basically the government's inability and lack of determination to procure fair prices and to give fair prices to the farmers.
Mr. Pilot, let me the Prime Minister today said that it's not as if the minimum support price scheme will, MSP is going overnight. He says MSP will be retained. Those who want to avail of the facilities of the market can do so. That's what he claims.
Well, Prime Minister had to defend himself because there was huge opposition, not just by the farmers and by the opposition parties, but within his own government. Like you just said, one of their oldest ally has quit from the cabinet, and for no good reason, except for the fact that they understand what the groundswell of emotions are. If you think Congress party is misleading the farmers, then across India, across states, people are coming out in large numbers to oppose this move because the simple question is, Rajdeep, will an elected government be more sympathetic to the farmers or a corporate which is there to make profit and money? In a few years' time, you'll have strong monopolies, you'll have small marginal farmers who will be dependent on these people for their money coming in. In fact, I think less than 5% of the procurement is done on MSP. So it's the government as a fallback option, as a safety net that has existed for so many years. We want to dismantle all that and allow people to come and buy crops from people, which is fine if you have the access, the investment and the ecosystem to create that. How do you expect a 2-acre landowner from rural Rajasthan to go to Delhi, Noida or Chandigarh to sell their farm? And look at the nuances in the ordinance. It says up to 3 days for payments. And at the SDM level, it'll be all resolutions will be accounted for. How do you expect a small farmer to go to an SDM or a collector to resolve that? And if there's non-payment, where's the redressal system? There is no assurance and guarantee by the government that the private people who are procuring crops will actually be able to deliver that money. If they renege on their contract, if they fleece the farmers, where is the safety net? So farmers agitated in Corona times, there is economic downturn, the economy is shrinking. At such a time, you bring in an ordinance without consultation, it's a state subject. How many states have signed up for it? I mean, there has to be a larger debate. You just can't do reforms like Notbandi, like, pushing through GST. Suddenly you have this, there is not a single person in the government of India who I think feels for the farmers, is able to communicate and articulate their views. I think the opposition is not just by the political parties and within their own government and ministers, but farmers at large, especially the small and marginal farmers. The large farmers who have access to international markets or big cities in India perhaps might benefit, but the small and marginal farmer is certainly set to lose.
I'm going to come to you in a moment, particularly about the safety net point, but let's hear from Jai Panda on a very important point that Mr. Pilot has made, that this is the government's flaw in this is the way you're ramming it through. That's part of the problem. You're pushing it through. you haven't done the adequate consultation with stakeholders, and you've used COVID times to push this through. Supply links are broken. Now we are going to do the dismantling of APMC. Wrong time, wrong method adopted by the government, even if the intent, the overall intent may be useful in terms of freeing up the markets to the farmer.
Let me just take apart the argument that you have just summarized. Number one, the APMC and the Essential Commodities Act, they belong to an era of the 1950s and 60s when there was a shortage of food. And these laws were restrictive on farmers. It restricted them as to whom they could sell their produce to and where they could sell. Now, for several decades, India has gone from being a shortage nation in grains to huge surplus. And everybody of any standing has been asking for the repeal of these acts and to free up the farmers so that they can sell their produce to whoever they want, wherever they want. Now, this was in the Congress's manifesto, as you have pointed out. The word is it's very clear. It says Congress will repeal the APMC Committees Act. The same thing about the Essential Commodities Act. The reality is like this. The farmers will be able to sell to whoever they want, wherever they want, and that empowers the seller. As opposed to last 60, 70 years, it has restrained the seller, the farmer.
Does the small and marginal farmer have that clout, Mr. Panda? You know, the large farmer can have that clout to go to the market. The small and marginal farmer who comprises 86% of India's farm population, does he have that clout across the world? America subsidizes, protects its farmer. The farmer needs protection.
Rajdeep, you're parroting my friend Sachin Pilot's argument. Please try to be more neutral. Let me explain this. It is today.
No, please. I am giving you the other argument.
You must allow me.
Yes,
you must allow me to explain the BJP's and the government's point of view.
Please do.
You must give me that courtesy. Let me explain. The reality today and for the past 60 years is that the empowered people are the middlemen, the small number of limited middlemen. It's a buyer's market. So when you reverse that, when the seller can sell to whoever he wants, wherever he wants, it empowers particularly the small farmers. They don't have to go to New York to sell. The mandis today, which are controlled by a small number of middlemen, will be open to anybody to come and purchase. The farmer can sell to anybody. These sort of restrictions are not there in any other sector in the country, and that is why farmers' incomes have not been rising. Now, let's be very clear about something. There is hypocrisy which is behind this propaganda to try to get the farmers to not understand this properly. Now, my friend Harsimrat Badal explained her position. I don't want to go into that, but there was something very crucial that she said. She mentioned that parties out there trying to bhadkao the farmers. That is essentially what is happening. Now, remember, everybody, you mentioned Ashok Gulati, one of our foremost agri-economists, who said this is the 1991 moment. Yes. Not just him, Shamika Ravi, another economist. Every economist of standing in the last 50 years has asked for this. Not just economists, farmers' leaders, the late Sharad Joshi, who spent a lifetime campaigning for farmers' rights. So, let's be very clear. The misrepresentation that's going on.
Sir, Mr. Panda, just a minute. Yes. There's a division within farmer groups, within economists. I just want to come to one point, though, and I want your view on this. Today, Mr. Chidambaram, former finance minister, said the grave flaw in the ordinances is that they do not stipulate the price which the farmer shall get shall not be less than MSP. So his concern which he has voiced, is tomorrow, when a farmer goes, let's say, to a private procurer, if a mandi is set up by a private company there, that person may not give them the MSP price which today he is guaranteed. And remember, only 6 to 8% farmers in any case are covered by MSP.
So this is a fundamentally irrational argument, because this is based on the premise that, first of all, the argument was being made that MSP is going away. That's simply not true. The Prime Minister has clarified. The Agriculture Minister has clarified. Now, the MSP is a safety net. Now, what we have had all these decades is just the MSP and a small regulated mandi where the middlemen, the buyers, had the power. Now, today, the farmers have the freedom to sell to whoever they want. And since the MSP is not going away, no matter what the prices are being offered in the various mandis, the MSP safety net continues to be there. So this is just disingenuous. That's simply not correct. Now, look at MSP. All kinds of vague arguments have been made against MSP. But the reality is, in the last 5 years, during the Modi government, the MSP on paddy has gone up 2.4 times, almost 2.5 times. The MSP on wheat has gone up 1.7 times. So, it's not that this government is against MSP as a safety net, but to introduce competition to the farmers' markets, to give farmers choice, it is irrational to say that it harms farmers. You can legitimately argue that it harms middlemen.
Let me take that to you, Sachin Pilot, because the fact is for 70 years we tried a particular type of protectionism safety net for the farmers. MSP was just one instrument used. And the feeling is that, as Jai Panda suggests, middlemen benefited, commission agents benefited, political parties linked to the APMC structure benefited. Did the small and marginal farmer really benefit? So to that extent, if competition is being introduced without dismantling, according to Jai Panda, MSP, why not try it? Why not give that opportunity to the farmer that we've given other sectors of the economy?
Competition. I think there'll be collusion. Once the government is out of the scene, two private big importers or corporates can join hands and squeeze the damn farm. I'm saying to you, Rajdeep, if a small farmer from Ajmer, does he have the wherewithal to go to Bombay or Delhi or Nasik? And the ordinance says up to 3 days for paying the farmer. I'm saying, where will the poor farmers stay logistic-wise? I mean, the infrastructure is not there. And the reality on the ground is a small farmer does not have the bandwidth to go and sell to a large importer or a corporate house. I think what the government should have done was to have a scientific temperament, to have investments in it, to reform the market sector. I think if APMC has to be removed, there must be a better alternative. The government just can't wash its hands off and say, well, let the market...
So what would the Congress have done? What would the Congress, which had already decided that you needed to repeal the APMC Act, what would you have done?
I think first you have to give a minimum support price where even the private buyer cannot buy less than that price. That's a safety net. That's an insurance a farmer must. I mean, if there's a glut in the market, farmer will go into debt. There is the record number of suicides that is happening today, Rajdeep. This ordinance will not help mitigate that risk. The farmer is still at risk. He's very vulnerable. He needs more cooperative farming. He needs much larger agricultural lending. They need technical inputs. They need reforms in the market sector. But government can't wish away from its responsibility by saying no MSP now. The PM and the government may say MSP will remain. But time will show you that if it is pushed through, and we will try all we can to stop it, once it's pushed through, private players will become interested because farmer sector, textile sector, all have lobbies. The farmers have no lobby. That's why the government can do what it wants without having a parallel structure that is efficient, that is confidence building.
The existing system, though, has not stopped. Sachin Pilot, existing system has not stopped farm suicides. Farmers are still dependent at times on the money lender. Farmers are still dependent on the vagaries of vendors. Let's be honest. A system has been tried, and at times the system there have been loopholes in the system.
You think all the farmers who are agitating are all Congress supporters? They're all driven by political parties. They're fearing for their livelihoods. I mean, they fear that the fact that there is no insurance policy, there is no credit line being given to us, MSP might be removed. They will never be able to get fair price for their input that they put into grow the crops. There is fear. It's not about communication. I think the government of India is very good in communicating. In fact, it has a lot of monopoly in how it uses platforms to communicate what it wants to communicate. But here, there was no consultation. If their own allies, their own government members are not supporting this act, how do you expect the farmers and the opposition to say yes to it? It's absolutely unpalatable, not just to the opposition parties, but also to all stakeholders. And by the way, I'm for one saying that if middlemen can be removed, yes, please remove them. But you can't put the farming community at risk and then take this chance. Look at Bihar. It was a state where APMC was removed. What is the tangible benefit that Bihar has seen? It's been done in a very rushed manner.
You know, that's a good point. And Bihar is often cited by agriculture economists who are against these ordinances, Jai Panda, to suggest that, look, you first have to put the structures in place. You first have to ensure that private players will actually come into areas where today the APMC mandis exist. You can't just dismantle the old system without having the structures ready for new. And that's the big concern which perhaps farmers have. Let's not just call it a Congress-led opposition this time. There are regional parties which are opposing it, and there are farmers' organizations also, especially in North India, opposing it, because the structures don't exist. This is again Modi-nomics ramming its way through, is what the opposition alleges, without consultation, without taking states into confidence.
Okay, please give me time to rebut both Sachin and you, because there is a long list of straw man arguments here that need to be exposed. Number one, there is no ramming through because for many decades, people have been asking for it, both economists, agri-economists, and farmers' leaders, as I've already summarized. And this is not being rammed through. It is being done by Parliament, by majority in Parliament. So that argument is done. Second argument
rammed
is
by
again
a
a straw
parliament
man
majority,
argument.
Mr. Panda.
Let me explain. You know, you didn't keep interrupting Sachin, so please give me the same.
I interrupted him also, but go ahead. Please don't.
Please give me the same. Please give me the same. I know, Rajdeep, you struggle to be neutral when it comes to the BJP, but please try.
You've also become the same, but go ahead.
So give me a chance.
Yes.
So the second straw man argument is that somehow this is going to disempower the farmers. It actually disempowers middlemen. And farmers don't have to go to Bombay or New York, as Sachin makes another straw man argument. Farmers will be selling in their local areas to mandis, which will be developed by many new players that will come up. And government is not going away. Third straw man argument is that the MSP is going to go away. So what if the mandis offer them lower price? That's precisely why MSP is there. If mandis offer lower prices, farmers don't have to sell. They will be under no compulsion. They will sell to government. Fourth straw man argument is 3 days payment. You think today the mandis are giving them only cash on delivery? They are being exploited by money lenders. 3 days is a vast improvement. It requires the district collector to ensure that farmers get paid within 72 hours. That's a great improvement. Now, another straw man argument. You gave the Bihar example. The Bihar example is precisely why this needs to be done on a national level. Because for true competition to happen, mandis can't exist only within a district or within a state. So because there could be shortage of grains in another state, so somebody has to go transport it there. It's not going to be farmers. Farmers will sell to the mandis, but buyers will come to mandis only if they can transfer it to other places economically. For that, the competition is required. This is precisely why every stakeholder has been asking for this to be done on a national level, not on a state level. Okay. And that's what's being done.
Okay, I think we've heard both sides. I've given you equal time, despite what Mr. Panda's reservations were. We can play this back, and I'm glad that two of you, you told me before the show, are friends, did not fight with each other like you do on television, and therefore you got an opportunity to have your say. Sachin Pilot, good to have you back on air and talking about an issue which you are concerned about. And Jai Panda, good that you've come with muscle with all your facts. Thank you both very much for joining me and giving us two different perspectives of the two major political parties of the country. Remember, it's the farmers at the end of the day who are the ones who are at the heart of this. What are they saying? Listen in.
क्या मोदी जी आज ये 3 अध्यादेश लेकर के आए हैं, ये उतने ही सच हैं जब वो उस गद्दी पर बैठे थे उन्होंने ये कहा था कि मैं किसान का कर्जा मुक्त कर दूंगा? क्या ये वो सच्चाई आज उतनी ही सच्चाई है?
किसानों को बिल्कुल झूठ बोल बोल कर गुमराह कर दिया इन्होंने, बिल्कुल पूरी तरह से पूंजीपतियों को बढ़ावा देने के लिए इन्होंने पूरा स्टॉक करने की इजाजत दे दी है।
एमएसपी हमको दिखाने के लिए मत दिखा लो, उस पर खरीद करनी है। सरकार ने एक बार भी नहीं बोला है कि हम खरीद करेंगे। सरकार बोल रही है कि एमएसपी रहेगी। एमएसपी रहना और एमएसपी पे खरीद करना, ये दो अलग अलग बात है।
पंजाब में 25,000 आड़तियां है, उसके साथ लगभग 12,50,000 लेबर काम करती है। ये सभी बेरोजगार हो जाएंगे। मल्टीनेशनल कंपनियां आएंगी, वो इनको 100-150 रुपए दाम ज्यादा देंगी, किसानों को 2 साल देंगी, 6 महीने देंगी या 1.5 साल देंगी, उसके बाद किसानों की लूट होगी।
जैसे कॉन्ट्रैक्ट फार्मिंग में इन्होंने कहा कि किसान के साथ बड़ी कंपनियां जुड़ेंगी और वो पहले से भाव तय होगा और तय होने के बाद फिर किसान से वो कंपनियां उस भाव पे माल को खरीदेंगी। लेकिन क्या होगा यदि कल कंपनी कह दे कि ये माल की तो क्वालिटी डाउन है? किसान ने कितनी मेहनत की है, कितनी लागत लगाई, वो तो बर्बादी।
So there you're hearing the concerns of the farmers, especially in North India. I'm joined by two farm experts. I have less time with them, but I still want to hear them. Devinder Sharma joins me from Chandigarh, and Ajay Veer Jakhar, Chairman Farmers Forum of India, join me. Let's get both your perspectives. Where do you stand? Do you believe this is India's 1991 delicensing movement, Ajay Veer Jakhar, as Professor Ashok Gulati told me yesterday, or do you believe those who say that this could lead to the ruination of the small and marginal farmer?
So I think nothing is black and white. Everything is a gray matter. This is no 1991 moment of agriculture. This is very much questionable. But even if you were to believe that the government intention is good, which I think it is good, these ordinances which have been made into bills have been made without consultation of states, have been made without consultation of farmers, and that is why farmers are agitating. There are problems in how government is communicating its programs.
So is your concern only the communication? Do you believe the content and the intent is in the right direction?
No. I said the intent is in the right direction, but the content is not in the right direction. बहुत फर्क होता है. नियत तो सब आदमियों की अच्छी हो सकती है, but उनको काम करने का तरीका भी आना चाहिए, which this government is unfortunately taking advice from the wrong sort of people. And let me just very clearly say that middlemen are not going away because these acts have been amended. Middlemen are here to stay in perpetuity, first of all. Second of all, I heard Jay Panda ji talking about various things, but let me just tell him very clearly, उन्होंने MSP की बात करी, election से पहले BJP increased the MSP before the last parliamentary elections by 12.9%. After the elections, in the last year, they increased it by 3%. This year, they've increased it by 2.9% only. So it is not as Mr. Panda is saying, the acts don't allow states to regulate trade. It's like having a stock exchange without a registrar of companies or a SEBI. There is no mandi fees. If the states can't collect mandi fees, how are they going to develop rural infrastructure? There's no price realization mechanism. And the best part is even a union minister in the cabinet who has signed who has agreed in the cabinet to introduce an ordinance and then signed in the cabinet to introduce a bill is saying that she has not been consulted.
Okay, that's the politics of it. I want to focus purely on the economics. You've raised your concerns. Devinder Sharma, what are your concerns? Do you believe that this is 1991 delicensing moment for agriculture?
I don't know how can one say that it is a 1991 delicensing movement. You know, it only means that you are perhaps representing the industry, and the industry is very keen that this should have happened earlier. So let's not get into that.
What's your biggest concern? What's your biggest concern, Devinder ji?
My biggest concern is that, you know, the markets would exploit the farmers, as has been the experience everywhere in the world, and farmers need a kind of a protection. And farmers are demanding that we need a fourth ordinance or bring in a kind of a change in the existing ordinances, which says that, you know, everything that will be purchased would be above the MSP. And when I say the MSP, I think I heard Mr. Panda also talking about that, you know, MSP will in any case be, available. The fact of the matter is that the government provides MSP or announces MSP for 23 crops, out of which only 2 crops are the one where it matters in reality because the government procures that. Rest of the crops, it is only as on paper, it is not implemented. So let's say if I'm a wheat farmer or rice farmer, the argument that I can go outside and if somebody gives me a higher price, I should accept it, fine. But what happens when I come back to the mandi and I'm not given a higher price, I'm given a low price? What happens to in that particular case? They say, oh, you can come back and you have the MSP in any case. Well, MSP is not implemented. What does it mean? Having an MSP is only effective as long as it is implemented. So why can't we make MSP a legal right for farmers?
Okay, but how do you respond? Rajdeep, you want MSP to be a legal right, but what about the government which says that this move will actually increase private investment in public investment in storage? The key areas, perishable commodities have suffered over the years. People throw tomatoes on the road every year when things go wrong. This will give an opportunity to the farmer, particularly in perishable commodities, to have quality storage facilities. We will finally have investments in agriculture.
Well, if all this is going to be true, I'm saying in every debate I go, there is industry representative saying, oh, the farmers is going to benefit a lot because he's going to get a higher price. Well, if you are so sure that you are going to give farmers a higher price, what is wrong in then, making MSP a legal instrument? You are in any case going to give a higher price. What is the problem then? Experts are happy, economists are happy, the government is happy, the industry is happy. Then at least provide a kind of a confidence to the farmers.
So make MSP a legal. If the Narendra Modi government says we are making MSP a legal right, will that then satisfy you?
I can tell you 95% farmers would be very happy with that, would be content. And I think that's the way forward. You make it a legal instrument and ensure that no trading takes place below the MSP. And let me tell you, that will be the real freedom for the farmers. He can sell anywhere outside the mandi, inside the mandi, and he's sure that he will get an MSP. That's what he wants.
30 seconds, Ajay Veer Jakhar. What is the one big change if you were recommending one to Narendra Modi? You say he has the wrong advisors. What would you recommend? I
say he should listen to farmers. He should listen to farmers. He should we should evaluate all Government of India policies which for the beneficiaries for which it is. And जैसे देवेंद्र शर्मा जी कह रहे हैं, if the government is so is really focused on farmers, what Devendra Sharma ji is saying that no MSP will be given, the government has to be very clear on its communication. It cannot keep saying MSP will continue, which itself is a very misleading statement.
Right. Okay.
My only submission is that farmers must be consulted when policy is made, unlike these ordinances that have happened. And that is why the government is facing so much flack, because it did not get the feedback from the ground from the farmers.
Let me leave it there. This is a debate we will carry forward in the weeks ahead, because this is going to be one of the major issues which confront the farmer, who, remember, is our Annadata. We tend to forget that, except of course when our politicians remember the Kisan at election time. Thank you all very much for joining us.